Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday. It's the second day of June, 2025. And as usual, we have some very important stories that have come across the headlines. In fact, two of our stories are two of the three main ones we've been highlighting in the last several weeks with respect to last day's Bible prophecy and their importance. And of course, that's the so-called potential agreement between Iran and the United States to stop Iran from enriching uranium and continuing on with their nuclear weapons program. And of course, Israel and Hamas in Gaza trying to end that war and get the hostages released. So two stories about that today. But we start with a very, very sad story. Sad in a lot of ways, but also indicative of what's going on in the world and will continue to go on according to the Bible. So let's get right to them. Six are wounded in an attack on pro-Israel hostage events in Boulder, Colorado, including a Holocaust survivor. This is from the Jerusalem Post, and this is a very, very difficult story. We'll get to it, and repercussions of this. The implications are really, really sad because it's second of many recent ones in the United States, and they're certainly not going to be the last. All right, Hamas says it's ready for indirect talks to resolve points of contention on the Gaza deal. This is from the Times of Israel. Well, why? Why talk to them? They're not changing their stance. The points of contention are already, made very clear. So it's again wasting time. And we got the same thing too. Iranian diplomat says Tehran posed to reject completely the one-sided U.S. proposal for a nuclear deal. That's from the Times of Israel also. So we got Hamas rejecting the deal. We have Iran rejecting the deal. So what's there to talk about? Then finally, a great story from Gatestone, why a nuclear deal with Iran is not enough. And it's something we've been saying over the years, and they give a very thorough explanation. So we'll end with that today to kind of put everything into perspective. So let's get to the stories. This first one, six wounded in an attack on a pro-Israel hostage event in Boulder, Colorado, including a Holocaust survivor. This comes from the Jerusalem Post. FBI personnel and local police are investigating a potential terror attack. It's not a potential terror attack, it is a terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, that occurred at an event raising awareness for the Israeli hostages, FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino said in a post on Twitter or X. On Sunday afternoon, a man threw Molotov cocktails and used an improvised flamethrower to target participants of a weekly walking group that raises awareness for the hostages in Hamas captivity. Local police reported that six people were burned, with CNN reporting that the victims are aged between 67 and 88. Their injuries range from very serious to more minor. Boulder Police Chief Stephen Redfern said, according to Reuters. One of the victims is a Holocaust survivor, an individual who was at the march and knows the victim, told CNN this. An eyewitness said one woman was so badly burned that her hair caught fire. Another eyewitness said she saw people strip and roll on the ground to put the fire out. All the victims have been taken to nearby hospitals, authorities said, and at least one person is in critical condition. CNN reported the suspect was named as 45-year-old Mohammed Sabri Soliman, an Egyptian citizen who previously applied for asylum in the U.S. He was denied a visa to enter the country in 2005, law enforcement sources told CNN. Now, wait a minute. If he's denied a visa to enter the country in 2005, what's he doing in the country in 2025? That's a great question. He's now in police custody. I'm sure there's a lot of answers that need to be received from this issue. In videos of the attack that have been circulated on social media, the suspect is seen walking and shouting, "End Zionist" and "Palestine is free," while holding bottles containing clear liquids. FBI officials said they believe Solomon it was the only suspect and he was not acting at behest of any wider terror group. He's going to be charged in the coming days, as Boulder County District Attorney Michael Doherty said at a press conference. Now, the weekly walking group, it's called Run for Their Lives. It noted that in their walk, it was not a protest, but rather a peaceful gathering to raise awareness for the hostages in Gaza. And sadly, this incident comes just a week after two Israeli embassy workers were murdered outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington by a man who shouted "Free Palestine" while being arrested. So here we have a second incident in a couple of weeks that is very similar. And sadly, this sort of anti-Semitism is going to only get worse. In fact, eventually, we're told from Scripture it's going to be on a worldwide basis. And we deal with this in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, sign 21, where Israel is basic. The anti-Semitism will be increased, and Israel will be isolated from the world, and there'll be a hatred there worldwide for the nation of Israel. Again, sign 21 from our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible prophecy. So, this sad event, this horrific event, it's not the first, and sadly, it won't be the last of the anti-Semitism that's going on in the United States and actually worldwide. Now, what's happening is not only Israelis are being attacked and Jews are being attacked, but also people who stand for Israel and stand for the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're going to be attacked also. They'll be in part of these marches, part of these groups. So don't think it's just going to be isolated towards the Jews, because we know from, and usually it's Bible believing Christians that stand with them. So in the last days, we remember that there's two groups, as we talk about, that are going to be persecuted, Christians and Jews. And that's exactly what we see today. And isn't it interesting that the Bible predicted so long ago that the two groups who will exist at the time in the end will be persecuted are two groups that probably, naturally speaking, should never exist. Christians and Jews. Jews should have been wiped out long ago with all the persecution there. Christians, at the time this was written, was a small group of people that had their leader put to death by Pontius Pilate in the city of Jerusalem, died on a cross. And yet he came back from the dead, and the Christian message continues to spread to the entire world. And one of the truths that the Bible gives that in the last days it will be Christians and Jews who will be persecuted, precisely what we see. All right, now we're going to shift gears to two of our three major current problems, Israel and Hamas, and Iran and the U.S. Headline number two, Hamas says it's ready for indirect talks to resolve points of contention on the Gaza deal. Announcement comes amid pressure from Arab mediators for terror groups to soften its response to Witkoff's proposal, but statement doesn't specify whether the response has been revised. Hamas announced Sunday that it was prepared to immediately begin a new round of indirect negotiations on remaining points of contention amidst pressure from mediators to soften its stance after the terror group submitted a response to the U.S. ceasefire and hostage deal proposal that Washington called totally unacceptable. Hamas said in a statement that its goal for the new talks would reach a deal that ensures, get this, relief for our people and an end to humanitarian catastrophe, ultimately leading to a permanent ceasefire and the complete withdrawal of the occupation forces. Well, that's nothing new. That's what they've been saying the whole time, and it's a non-starter as far as Israel and the U.S. are concerned. Now, the terror group did not say they had rescinded or revised the proposal that it submitted on Saturday to U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. So their position hasn't really changed. Okay, hence, what's the purpose of the talks? Now we move to another dead-end set of talks, and this is headline number three. Iranian diplomat says Tehran poised to reject completely the one-sided U.S. proposal for a nuclear deal. Iran is poised to reject a U.S. proposal to end a decades-long nuclear dispute, an Iranian diplomat says, slamming it as a non-starter that, now get it, fails to address Tehran's interests and leaves Washington's stance on uranium enrichment unchanged. Again, notice the word demand from these groups. We talked about this yesterday. Hamas is demanding this. Tehran is demanding this. Iran is drafting a negative response to the U.S. proposal, which could be interpreted as a rejection of the U.S. offer. It could be. It is a rejection if you disagree with it, if you have a negative response. The senior diplomat who is close to Iran's negotiating team tells Reuters the U.S. proposal for a new nuclear deal was presented to Iran on Saturday by Oman's Foreign Minister Saeed Badr al-Abu Sadi, who said was on a short visit to Tehran, has been mediating nuclear talks with Tehran and Washington. But after 5 rounds of talks between Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff to resolve the nuclear standoff, many issues remain unresolved. Well, I wonder why, because there's red lines each side has that are totally impossible to cross over. Among clashing red lines is Iran's rejection of U.S. demand that Tehran commit to scrapping its uranium enrichment, viewed as potential pathway to develop nuclear bombs. It's not a potential pathway; it is a pathway, and that's exactly what they've been doing for 20 years. As the story that came out Saturday made it very clear. So again, what do we see? Like Hamas or Iran demands certain things in these deals. They're demanding it. Now, they're not in a position of making demands. And as our next article will highlight, any deal that does not address their ballistic missile program or their worldwide sponsoring of terrorism is worthless. And this story comes from Gatestone. Why a nuclear deal with Iran is not enough. It's an excellent summary of what we've been saying over the years. So it's perfect timing that this comes up now with what's going on with the Iranians and the U.S. As talks between Washington and Tehran are underway to reach an agreement on Iran's efforts to acquire nuclear weapons, even if a deal is reached, unless it features anywhere, anytime inspections to which Iran has never agreed, Iran will secretly continue to develop nuclear weapons and cheat. This is so obvious, and this is so clear what they laid out. If such a deal is reached, Iran is also not going to stop its financial and military support for its terror proxies in the Middle East, including Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthi militia in Yemen. Iran, in short, is not going to abandon its declared goal of obliterating the Zionist entity, the little Satan, or the great Satan, the United States. If Trump is serious about preventing war and bloodshed in the Middle East, he must insist that any agreement with Iran's mullahs includes no centrifuges or uranium enrichment of any kind and no support, this is key, for Tehran's terror proxies. If something could possibly go wrong, unfortunately it will, leaving Trump with the legacy of delivering yet another laughable fake peace deal and of his presidency being that of another failed Barack Obama. Trump must also demand that Iran's leaders stop calling for the annihilation of Israel. The same is true for the leaders of Qatar, as well as Qatar's personal insults against Trump himself. The Iranian regime is determined to continue supporting terrorist leaders to help them achieve their goal of murdering Jews and eliminating Israel. Iran's openly stated goal is to destroy Israel, but the broader game is its perception of the United States as the great Satan. Iran's strategy involves orchestrating various terrorist groups in the Middle East with multifaceted objectives. Firstly, it seeks to dominate the Islamic world in the region, asserting its influence over other nations, and simultaneously, it aims to strike at the credibility of the United States, a long-standing adversary in Iranian foreign policy. The Trump administration would do well to take these issues into consideration before signing any agreement with Iran. All right, such an agreement, if reached, unfortunately, will not mean that the Iranian regime becomes America's friend. As long as the mullahs continue to wish for the destruction of Israel and America and back Islamic terror groups, they should be treated as dangerous enemies of both the U.S. and Israel, which is exactly what they are. Nothing has changed. And again, it is fruitless to negotiate with these people because remember, we've talked about this so often. Iran believes they are supernaturally guided, predestined by Allah to basically start this nuclear conflagration that destroys the little Satan Israel, the big Satan United States, which they believe will bring Islamic rule to the entire world under this Shia Islam, which their brand of last days view is. And so that's why they're working towards this. And they believe they have a supernatural calling to do this. And if someone believes they have a supernatural calling, nothing's going to be able to stop, no amount of money, no amount of threats, no amount of anything. And this is what's been guiding them for the last 20 years, the leadership there, the mullahs, the ayatollahs, and the such like. And so bottom line is, as we said the other day, there's no agreement with Iran that would be a good agreement. 10 years ago, when Obama agreed to the JCPOA, we commented that nothing was said about their ballistic missile program or their sponsoring terrorism worldwide, two things that were omitted. And as far as we know, the present agreement is similar, says nothing about Iran stopping its activities through its proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Islamic groups in Iraq and Syria. And so basically, nothing has changed. It's no real difference. It's kind of like warmed over JCPOA, JCPOA 2, what Obama ran through, bypassing the Congress and went to the United Nations Security Council to sell this thing in 2015. All right, so here's the deal. We know from Scripture that Iran will be a subordinate of Russia in the last days when the invasion of Israel takes place. They will not lead the charge, but will only be a surrogate. This means they'll continue to have a terrorist mindset to some degree, but will not be the major threat we are. We explain all this in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end, signs 9 through 11, as we look at what the scripture specifically says about this last days Ezekiel 38:39 invasion. Also, we have an entire book on the subject called the Ezekiel 38:39 invasion, 38:39 invasion, where we go verse by verse through the number of chapters there in Ezekiel, starting with chapter 33 to put it in a wider context. All right, so to sum up, Witkoff, why is Witkoff? Here's the question we ask. Continuing to negotiate with Hamas and Iran, where their positions are immovable. When will the U.S. conclude that neither group will change? It's like we said yesterday. It's kind of like throwing a pair of dice and trying to get 13. You can throw it from now until 10 minutes after the last judgment, but you're never going to get to 13, only go up to 12. And it's fruitless to keep trying to do something like this because it's impossible to achieve what you're trying to achieve here. So anyway, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again by assuming that it'll eventually make a difference. In these cases, it won't. So sooner or later, somebody's going to have to realize enough is enough. When's that going to happen? Well, we'll have to wait and see. All right, I'm Don Stewart. We'll have another edition of Breaking News later with the latest headlines. And until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.